Hi, and welcome to our first lesson in our new historical weapon study. Like all these historical weapons, I don't have combat experience. So you don't have to come to me about the combat experience of using historical weapons. The historical weapons are a great tool for coordination, strength, balance, all the other things that come along with martial arts, plus the complexity of the nature of the weapon and things of that sort. So we'll work on theory of how to, use the weapon the way it was sort of handed down. But like I said, I haven't had a sword fight with anybody. I haven't had to defend myself with a stick, and I certainly haven't had to defend myself with a fan. But we can have some fun along the way, learning a little bit about this unusual historical weapon. So, like we did with our sword and with our stick, we're going to spend a few lessons at the beginning not worrying about choreography of sets and things like that. For people who haven't done some of the other weapons before, a lot of this is going to be sort of introductory. So we'll be talking about the nature of the weapon, and you'll be getting used to it. For people who have done some of the other weapons, particularly the people who followed through with the Choi the Foot sword set, that we worked on as our previous weapon, this is from the same system. So we're working within the Choi Li Foot system for the techniques we're taking for this study. And it will cross over a lot with things that were going on with the longer weapon, the sword. So you're going to see a lot of crossovers. For people who have spent time studying knife techniques, so you work in Filipino martial arts or you've done knife work in your other systems, fan was one of the ways to kind of publicly train knife fighting without sending off alerts. You could make it, you're just doing this nice, cultural weapon, but at the same time, you're working on the nature of knife cuts and as well as knife cuts, the fan covers another category because the fan isn't really an edged weapon. So it's going to function a little bit like an edged weapon, but it really is mostly a short percussive weapon. So the majority of the striking and things like that are going to be done. I know you're going to be disappointed to hear this, but the majority of the work is done with the fan in the closed position. So that's where the majority of the work is going to be done because really, depending on the material of your fan, you either got a small steel bar in your hands or you have a small wooden weapon in your hands if you've got a wooden or a bamboo fan. And so the majority of it's going to be percussive. Now, there is talk of with the metal fans how there was sharpened edges and along the tips and things like that. But truthfully, you'd have to be very careful because in order to make it useful enough to open and close, these pieces of metal get fairly fragile. So if you are slamming this in to people, you probably just bend and destroy your fan. But if you defended yourself, that's a good part of it. Now, one of the other cultural reasons that the fan became a self-defense weapon was because of, like a lot of things that motivate humans, status and trends. So there was a big trend for carrying the fans, and a lot of people think, oh, it'll be all the women carrying the fans. Nope, you were showing yourself as a scholar warrior, as a man, to carry a fan around. Now these ones, have sort of pictures and drawings, but a lot of the fans also carried poetry on the insides. So if you were, a young hip thing and you were trying to impress the women, you would, pow, you'd open up your fan and you'd show them your calligraphy and you would show them your poetry and you would woo them all. And that was part of one of the reasons for carrying around. It was also just because things were darn hot and this was a way to cool off. It was also a period of time where there was a fair amount of street interactions. And so if you had something with you, why not learn to use it as an advantage in a self-defense situation? So one of the first things we're going to look at, like we did with the sword, we talked about grip with the sword. So a fan is not very strong if it is flexed on the flat side. So if I'm bending my fan on the flat side, you can notice that it's pretty easy for me to get a bit of a curve going in this. I don't want to do it too much because I don't want to damage the fan. So that means if I strike somebody with the flat side of my fan, I'm probably going to break the weapon more than anything else, and it's going to bend and deflect more. So its impact is going to be less. So the grip that we want to be able to use, and this is something you're going to have to work on because it feels uncomfortable when you first get going with it. The grip that we're going to use is going to be to squeeze the sides of the fan between our thumb and our knuckles so that we have the edges of the fan facing away. So if you're lifting your hand up with your knuckles away from you, you want the edges of your fan facing away, not the side of your fan. So you don't want to smack with the side. When I get the edges of the fan, I can't bend it at all. It has strength in that direction. So that's something to keep in mind through all of this stuff, that when we're grabbing it, we want to have the edges in a way that we can face out. Now, your thumb is going to be what ends up controlling, and I know everybody wants to open and close the fan, so first lesson, let's open and close the fan a little. So fans are directional. Most of us are going to be carrying a right-handed fan. If you are left-handed, you would need a left-handed fan. So we're not going to be able to open and close the fan in our non-dominant hand. We'll still work on the strikes and the percussive nature of it, but the opening and closing, unless you have a left-handed fan, we're going to stay with our openings and closings. So from this grip, what we want to be able to do is use the knuckle of our thumb in order to hook onto the edge of the fan. See, I'm starting to pull that edge of the fan towards me. What that will allow me to do is let go and pinch that edge between my finger and thumb and let go of the rest of the weapon. So I want to be able to, from my fighting position, from being able to smash with it and hit with it and things of that sort, I want to be able to pull back, and I'm kind of pinching between, can I show this in the camera somehow? Pinching between the finger and the thumb. And then if I do that, I should be able to let go of the rest of the weapon. Then we're going to have to, once we get that weapon open, we're going to have to transfer our hands into a way that's going to help keep the fan open. So that means you're going to have to transfer your fingers so that they kind of help open the spokes of the fan so that you could thrust, you could move that around without it closing on you. So you're kind of the what's keeping it open is this grip on the fan to keep it open. Now to put the fan back away, you're going to lift the wrist up and let it collect back into your hand again. And then you want to get back to your fighting grip. So you want to be able to go pull back and flick down. As you flick down, you want to come around and start to collect up. So you're using the fingers here to help push the fan open. You're kind of pushing it into the base of your hand, and then you should be able to wave it around without it closing. When you want to put it away, lift it back up and come back to your grip. Okay, so that's something you can, annoy everybody in your household with for the next few days, opening it up and closing it, opening it and closing it, opening and closing it. What you want to get used to, if you want to get used to opening and closing, and something that's going to happen in the set, is we're going to do this also across the front of the body. So that you're opening by sliding it across. And that will lead us into our cuts. Now, some of the fan work is just a distraction. So sometimes when that fan is open, it's not we're using it as a weapon, we're using it as a startle. We're using it as a, oh, can you see me anymore? So you can use it as a way to block people's vision. You can use it as a way, hey, you're looking over here, allow me to kick you in the groin while you're looking over here. There's lots of things, but we'll have to get used. It takes quite a bit of time to be able to transfer to that position where you can manipulate the fan and then transfer back to the position where it's closed again. So remember, most important is getting that pinch. That's going to keep things together so you can strike. Okay, so we've got our regular grip. We're here. Now you'll notice that I'm not holding the fan right at its very end. Like a lot of short percussive weapons, and people who have experience, again, a lot of people with the Kali and things like that are used to working with the rattan sticks, with the Kali sticks, the Eskrima sticks, and the same thing. We've got this kind of end. So that means that we're using this pommel area as one of our strike zones. So if you think about the directions and the nature, again, if you're a karateka and you've done hammer fists, any way that you would hammer fist, we're now putting the point load into such a small area, right? We're putting all the point load into this. If I'm hitting with my hammer fist, all my effort is dispersed over the size of the fist. If I close this down smaller, now I'm using all that point load into a small area. So you can see that as a civilian self-defense weapon, that, you know, if you took this and you jam this into a temple, a side, a neck, a bridge of nose. So directions for the typical directions for hammer fist: outside to inside. So you're kind of twisting and hitting inwards. So again, like I'm saying, to the side of somebody's neck, straight into the rib cage, into the sides of people's legs and the pressure points. So you can put a lot of pressure in that area. Temple, coming from the outside, boom, to the inside. Next main direction for a hammer fist: top and down. So this is where, again, bridge of nose, top. Normally hitting the skull isn't going to do much, but if you put a point load now with this, this is into the ocular area, into the eye, into underneath the eye, bridge of nose, throat, collarbone. Again, depending on the angle the person's at, you know, base of skull, there's lots of areas. So this is a downwards hit. So we've got an outside to inside as a basic concept. We have a downward hammer fisting. The next concept for that is to come across the body and hit with the end of the fan from across the body. So again, similar targets. Now we've got 3 different ways so far we can work it: outside, downwards, and from the inside out. So cross body, outside, downwards. And there's lots of different targets you can hit. Again, you want to make sure you've got that good grip so it doesn't slide out of your hand, right? We're going to have to get a good solid connection to it so that we can put pressure through that. And even a bamboo or anything like that, you know, it doesn't have to be a metal fan to do this. You put all your point load into this small area, you give yourself advantage beyond your regular strength by being able to hit with that. Now, other ways to hit with the hammer fist, of course, is to take these and start to deliver them behind. So that movement from the outside and across, we can do by turning around and hitting with that hammer. We can turn around and hit down with the hammer. So we had a downwards that comes from the same side of the body. We can also get a downwards that comes across the body. So you're smashing down here. It's the same idea as coming across. You're just changing your angles. But that can be done by turning. That can be done by turning. And then another one that's done is low, where you're hitting down. Now this is often done backwards. Again, someone's grabbed you, you've got your fan with you because you know you happen to have it with you that day, and now you're smashing into the quads, into the top of the leg, into their body, into the groin. But you can also do that one as a bit of a flow, where you might hit on one side and then hit this way with it. So now you're hitting with that handle in towards the solar plexus, up and towards the groin, up underneath the jaw. So this is now a rising from the bottom. We're coming up from the bottom and hitting. Okay, so that covers the major directions for using the end of the fan. And it's one of the more potent ways to use this. You can get a massive amount of pressure into that hit. So outside, downwards from the same side, downwards from the opposite side, across, and up or low. So hitting behind, hitting from behind. So you've got all these ways to smash in with it. So just take 30 seconds now and just kind of think about how you might use this. And notice what I'm starting to do, like a lot of other work, is I don't want to leave the other arm out of the situation. I've got this other arm involved, so I can be hitting, I can be hitting, I can be hitting up from underneath, down on top. And right now we're just focusing on that handle. Boom. Now the handle also comes into play with things like hooking against somebody's wrists and arms, hooking into the collarbone area and pulling, hooking behind somebody's neck. So that's why you have, a good two or so inches of the fan out at the handle, because if you're hooking behind somebody's neck or hooking behind and in, or you're pushing it down in, or someone's got hold of you and you're pounding into the pressure points on their forearms, or you're breaking the small bones in the back of their hand, you can start to see that the end of this fan has a lot of potential. Somebody grabs hold of your collar here and you're driving that and pinching it in as you hit with something else. There's lots of ways that this short weapon works. There's also the study of Kubota and the small Japanese weapon, where you have just a small cylindrical weapon that uses a lot of this stuff as well. So these kind of cross over to a certain degree. Everybody's got one of those sitting on their window ledge, right? Okay, so let's now, as we progress through today and talk about some basic handling skills. So we're hitting with the end. We can also hit with this end. Now, this is where the ones that might have been sharpened on the tips would become a little bit more dangerous. But again, you don't need it to be that sharp. So Hammerfist, and in Japanese martial arts, we call this the top fist, where you're now working the thumb side. And so these are going to be, for those people who did the sword set, these are going to be the same as a lot of our thrusts that we worked on with the sword set. So we'd have, but we're working with a shorter weapon here. So we'd have these kind of rising low. Remember in the sword set, we dropped down, we stabbed upwards. So here we have this idea of thrusting upwards with the fan. This is very, very effective up underneath the throat or into the solar plexus or into floating ribs, or particularly if somebody's holding on. If you put the tip of that straight up into the pressure points in somebody's armpit, so you're driving the tip up inside, you're driving that. So this is a rising, thrusting motion. Now that can turn to a straight thrusting motion, where you're just driving that straight forward. So it's just a matter of kind of playing with the angles of your hands, thrusting, forward or up. So those are some of our thrusts. Now, when we were doing the sword set, we were also talking, and we're going to see a lot of this in this set, downwards thrusting. So now we're coming over and inwards. Down, straight, up. Those are going to be the three main ones. There's going to be variations of this, because we could come sideways. So we're coming in with that top fist sideways. Again, it's almost like a hook punch. Or if you think about hitting with the top fist here, but you put the weapon in your hand, you've got your good grip, so you've got your edges forward, and you're going in sideways. That means you could also come back this direction. This one's used a lot for kind of hitting in one direction, coming back another. So side, that could be into rib cage, side of neck. People who do a lot of knife work, you're going to see so much of this. We can thrust downwards. We can thrust upwards. Change my angle here so you can see a bit better. downwards, upwards. So those are two main ones. Boom, boom, down, up, straight. So you can be thrusting in straight, thrusting in straight. And that's just a matter of kind of changing those angles a bit. You know, anywhere that we change the angle of the handle, we change the direction of the thrust. So we can be thrusting straight, down, up. Then we also said we can come around the sides to thrust. So now we've got both ends of the fan working. We have the handle working with our hammers, and we have the tip of this working with our various thrusts that we can work with. So already, if you start to combine some of that together, you got a lot to work with. You know, you could be hammering here, you could be thrusting, it could be thrusting, it could be thrusting. Just thinking of it as a short stick or a short piece of metal in your hand that you're using, sideways, up, down, forwards with those thrusts. Hammer in one direction, thrust back in another, thrust one way, hammer another, and you've got a lot of potential that way. Okay, how are we doing for time? Just a couple minutes to cover a little bit more today. I'm not going to do as much as we did with the sword. It's easier to do the non-dominant side, but you definitely could with this as well. So I would suggest, especially if you're thinking of, you know, this is a bit of a modern exercise program, you want to switch the weight into the other hand. So if you're not opening the fan, we can't open the fan in the non-dominant hand, but we sure as heck can smack people with it. So handle, we've got those same hammer fists that we've been working on, you know, one side, other side, down, down, up. Then we also have on that non-dominant side, we could work our downwards thrusts, our upwards thrusts, our side thrusts, our straight thrusting. And we want to, you know, you can spend some time with that. So in the last couple minutes here, let's cover one more potential, and that is our edges. So we're going to have three main striking areas: handle or end, tip, and sides. Now, sides are where it becomes very, very important that you do not present the flat of your fan for your side strikes. As soon as you hit with the flat of your fan, you're going to break or bend your fan and you've lost your weapon. So we want to get that feeling. To make this a bar, I'm going to come back to this because this is important. Get that grip. So you're tightening around. You're putting pressure inwards on the fan with your grip so you can hit with the edges. And so now, just like any knifed weapon or percussive weapon, we're going to have our downward diagonals, striking and striking. So we can be hitting with this. Now I can think of this percussive because it's mostly going to be percussive, but you also want to get a little bit of a sense that you would, you know, attack with the edges of the fan, especially if you had a metal one that was a bit sharpened up, but even a wooden one, if you're dragging those edges across somebody's face or it's something of the sort. We always talk about pleasant stuff here. You know, you can be, so you're hitting. So we got downwards diagonals. We have upwards kind of striking. We have horizontal striking. We have vertical striking, either on same side of the body or opposite side of the body. We have upwards, sorry, I call those verticals, verticals, horizontals, and diagonals. And all cutting weapons, all striking weapons end up covering those. You've got your plus and you've got your X, all right? You've got strikes that work on any range of the X, and you have strikes that work on your plus. So you have verticals, horizontals, and diagonals. And that's, like I say, the same with just about any percussive or edged weapon that you get your hands on. You're going to find these patterns. 1, 2, risings, you've got horizontals at all sorts of different levels. So you can be striking this at all sorts of levels. But remember, as soon as that fan starts to slide apart or turn in your hand, the weapon's not going to function the way it should. So across and back, downwards X's, rising X's, these horizontals and verticals, verticals. And you'll notice that some of these blend. Notice that we're really working where we could either create these motions with the handle end, or we can release the wrist and come through with the rest of the weapon. And that's typically how you build power for striking anyway, is you think about the handle first and you follow through with the sides of it, one way or another. So you could be thinking about this outside hammer fist, but if you just continued through, that would be one of your horizontal strikes. Same with the back hammer fist, would turn into one of your horizontals. The downwards hammer fist, if you come through with the hand, is going to turn into your vertical. This rising can turn into a vertical, and same with the X's. I can be hitting here, following through, either handle or edges. Handle or edges, handle or edges. So what's going to happen as a striking system is we're going to learn how to blend those together. So like anything, there's not a whole lot of basics. We have covered the majority of the striking basics with the weapon closed in our first half hour. Of course, becoming comfortable with that might take a little longer, but then the game is going to be 1 turns into 2, 3 turns into 4, and so you start thinking about your thrusts and your slashes and your pommel kind of style striking, your handle style striking, and you get used to just kind of moving that from place to place and striking with various parts of the weapon. Okay, I'm gonna have to leave it there today, and we will cover things like footwork and some more stuff next week, and then we'll progress towards how does the Choi the Foot fan set integrate a bunch of these basics into a really kind of fun and beautiful set. As a warning to this set has a diving front roll in it. Now I have over the years learned how to modify it so you don't have to do the diving front roll, but I will do a lesson. I'll bring out some mats as part of our lesson, and I'll at least show you what it looks like for the diving roll, as well as what it looks like with the modified version, in case you don't want to launch over your couch, pop up and take out the army of ninjas that just got into your house. But it'll give you an idea, because this is also going to talk, the diving roll leads to a whole section of fighting with the fan from a crouched fighting position, so that not all the fighting aspects are done from a standing position. There's going to be some where you're actually down on one knee and learning how to fight from a more prone position, which is important to the self-defense part of it. Okay, glad you came to join us today to learn a little bit about the fan. We'll keep on training, we'll keep on learning about it next week. Like I say, we'll take a couple of lessons to work on some of the foundations and the footwork and stuff. Next week, we'll start to look at things like our walls and our roofs for blocking and deflecting with it and things of that sort. So we'll move from striking to parrying and deflecting. And then we'll also start to look at some footwork and start to bring things together before we focus just on memorizing a form. Okay, I'll stick around for a few questions afterwards. If not, I will see you next week, and thanks for joining in on our new weapon study. We will shock and amaze the neighbors with our fan.